Morning all. Thought we would do a bit of a, not necessarily a review, but just kind of talking about the problems that I have in the E, since a lot of people have been asking, like, what's wrong with it? I thought this car was the coming of Jesus. So, we'll go over a few things. Alright. Ignition on. Okay, so we'll go over some of the easier things that show up first. Excuse me. So, I do everything in 24-hour clock, so that's fine. That can be changed. But we are a metric family for a lot of different reasons I'm not going to get into. But anyway, so you can set all your units of measure into metric, but your temperature cannot be changed to metric at all. So I don't understand how this would work in a market like the UK or something like that, where you would probably do everything in metric, but your speed would probably be in imperial. But you can't make that change versus, say, in a Porsche, where you can literally change all of the units for consumption, for road speed, for temperature, whatever it is. Let's see, the biggest gripe that I have is the infotainment system. So let's see here. You have two back buttons, not 3 inches apart, that do the exact same thing. Two home buttons, not 3 inches apart, that do the exact same thing. I'm 5'10", and you cannot see the buttons over here. And then just kind of like poking my head up higher, you still can't see the buttons over here. So you really genuinely have to know what's going on over here. I do think that's minor, but that's still an issue. You have two USB ports in here. Those are fine. That's nice and deep. But in here, you have an NFC charging port, and then you have a USB port, and there's about, let's say, 1/2 inch of space here. So depending on your USB cable that you have, the problem is that you can't put a drink here because that blocks this. And this is the USB you must use, excuse me, in order to get Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which you cannot do wirelessly in this car. So let's see here. I'm in the garage. I'm probably not going to get satellite radio signal, but let's try to just bring up something. So I'm currently in presets, and I want to scroll presets. That's not a problem. You can scroll left or right. You can swipe up and down. I don't think that's the most intuitive thing. Oh, I actually do have a little bit of signal. Let's turn on volume here. Oh, that's another thing. So you see how you get entertainment volume up on the screen. That's fine. I think that makes plenty of sense. But the problem is that when you're driving and a navigation sound or let's say a phone call sound comes up, well, not phone call sound, if you get a chime of some kind, the radio does not turn down in volume. So it doesn't do that automatically. I've looked through the user manual. There's no setting for that. So you have, if you're listening to your music loud, which I don't really listen to music very loud, but loud enough to the point where you can't hear the navigation audio, you would have to turn the volume up or down, and you would use the volume knob over here. So when the navigation is talking, when you adjust the volume, you don't see anything on screen telling you how much you have the volume up and or down. And the reason why I find that to be an issue is because let's say you go to turn down the music volume and all of a sudden navigation starts speaking, which is a pretty common thing. That's really not out of the question. Well, you would turn down the volume on the navigation, but you'd have no idea that it's down in a lot of cases, just because it would be way too low prior to you actually hearing it. So then it turns into this confusing moment of, oh, did I turn down the volume for the navigation because my audio's still at this? So like, is my volume button not working? Or you might end up in a situation where you're trying to pay attention and you don't hear a navigation call out because your volume's too low. And in order to change it back, it is a handful of button presses. So it's either go home. You can also do it from within the within the radio menu. You'd have to scroll all the way over to system, because by default, home takes you to number 1, which is fine. So you have to go to system, and then you have to go to navigation and traffic announcements, and then you have to go to voice guidance volume. And you can make these adjustments here, but you can't do this without taking your eyes off the road. It's very distracting in that sense. And then, like I said, you don't see this bar when you make the adjustments whilst you're driving and you have the radio on. Matter of fact, if you don't see that adjustment anywhere, even if the radio's off, you have to go into this menu to make sure that the volume is where you want it, or you have to wait until they're talking to make that adjustment. I just find that unbelievably not confusing, just not very intuitive. Let's see here. So let's talk about changing the radio station, which I think is kind of a big deal. Oh, inconsistency in the menus. So I'm in here, and I hit the home button. It goes in. So I go back in the menu. I hit the home button again, and it takes me back. I hit the home button again, and it takes me to the main menu. So there's an inconsistency in the button press. So something that you expect it to do, it does not do. And it doesn't do that all the time. So we go back in the system. It takes us back to where exactly we were last time. I think that's good. And let's press the home button again. And it takes us all the way out, which is what I expected to do. I hit the home button, not the back button. It's very inconsistent. So let's say we want to go to the next track. If we look on the steering wheel, there's no button that looks very obviously next track, previous track. But if we look here on the main controller, excuse me, we do have a button that is, just kind of the standard icon for back and forward. So if I press this, and I'll shut up so you can hear it not change. Doesn't change. But what it does do is it brings up one of these menus. Now, you get this little up and down arrow, kind of lets you know, like, hey, if you go up or down, you can change the radio station. So might be a little confusing to some people. I don't think this part's a problem, but you would either scroll left and or right, not up or down, but okay. But you could swipe up or down. And I'm currently on my presets, so it's just going through news and basically EDM and lithium and whatever. My presets, that's fine. But let's say you want to tune. Well, you can't tune. Let's go back into radio. Even when you're here, you can't tune on this menu without going over and selecting whatever, if you're in FM or if you're in satellite radio, and then tuning like this. So I don't think that's ideal. And here's an easy way they could have fixed that. So you have two interfaces that do the exact same thing. Up and down here would have been perfect to swipe through your presets. This guy right here, with its range of motion and all the detents between, would have been perfect for cycling through tune. Let's see what else. Oh, here on the menu. I actually have to turn on the car for this one. So, car's on. That's fine. Let's say we want to go into, I don't know, we'll just put it in the race mode, just for the heck of it. Put it in the race mode, and it eventually goes away, but any information that you have back here is hidden until you confirm that it's just in this mode. Like, I told it to go into this mode. Why should I have now a confirmation menu in this mode? So all this information back here is just one more thing that gets in the way of your vision when you're driving. I don't find it very intuitive at all. It won't come out on audio, but really nice audio system. However, when you're at about, let's say, 30-40% volume, I noticed a couple of the speakers, they start to crack already. They don't like that volume very much at all. What else? Oh, this part is unbelievably infuriating. So the visual top surfaces are very nice leathers. They're all well wrapped. I think that's appropriate for a car that's 140,000 hours. But what I don't find appropriate is that you still have pressed, let's open the door here so you can get more light. You still have pressed plastics on the undersides, and on that's like bisecting the door. So this is problem number one. Like, why is there this pressed plastic here? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, in very low surfaces, I think that's fine, but like bisecting the door, I don't know if that's appropriate. On these lower dash parts, I don't know if that's appropriate for a $140,000 vehicle. as when you want to look at like the new RS6 or a Panamera or BMW M5, all of this is leather. So, you know, it's just a nicer place to be. And then they get inconsistent with some parts, which is very clearly just cost-cutting to increase margins. So this really nice leather surfacing, but like right next to it, in a part that you don't touch, this isn't pressed plastic. It's just a lower quality, cheaper leather, and it just doesn't look nice. So you end up with these like really nice surfaces that demark into these really cheap pressed plastic areas, this inconsistency in the materials. And I just don't find it very well, I don't want to say put together. The fit is nice. The finishes are horrid. What else? The way it drives is wonderful. I have no complaints about the way it drives. But ultimately, the biggest... Oh, and then the HVAC is very well done. I have to give them credit for the HVAC.